we're going to start first by actually just getting a little taste of it ourselves. We're going to do more of it later, but I want everyone to just get a little experience of mindfulness first by inviting us to practice for just 1 minute. And for this 1 minute, we're going to simply sit quietly, and we're just going to turn our attention to our breath, and we're going to turn our eyes away from our screen. So you can choose to either, you might even just like want to turn yourself on, like I'm just turning myself away from my screen for a few minutes, for just a minute. I can still hear everyone, but I'm just looking the other way. Or you can close your eyes if that makes you more comfortable, or just look down. But free yourself for just a moment from the technology, from the screen that's in front of you. We're going to take a break from it, and we're going to start to notice our breath. You don't have to do anything special here. You just notice your breath. Notice the fact that you're breathing right now. We're actually breathing in every given moment, and yet we so rarely pay attention to it. So for 1 minute, all we're going to do is sit quietly and experience how beautiful it is to breathe. And that was 1 minute. You can let your eyes refocus. You can bring your attention back to the screen, to the group, and take a moment to notice how it feels. From just 1 minute, you may have noticed it may have been challenging to quiet down for a minute. The mind may have been very busy with thoughts. Maybe the body was restless, or maybe you found it really relaxing because we get almost no time during the day for peace and quiet. Um, so mindfulness can be practiced in a quiet space like this, but it also can be practiced in the middle of our busy, busy, loud world. And we're going to talk about all of that today. Um, but before we get into all of that, all of the specifics, I want us to just start thinking about why mindfulness? What is the value of this? And so thinking about your experiences with your children and your interactions with your children, as well as any other young folks, maybe their friends or your nieces and nephews or other children that you interact with in your world. What would you say, from your perspective, are some of the biggest challenges or issues that are facing young people today? So if you've got an idea, you can drop that in the chat. What are some of the biggest challenges or issues facing young people today? I'm going to give folks a moment in case they want to share a thought or two. And then we've also got some data that we're going to look at as well. Parenting preteens. Yeah, that's a challenge for parents. Yes, parenting preteens. I'm almost there with my little ones too, and I'm starting to get little glimpses of it. So I know. Yep. Yes, school shootings, feeling safe in school. Yeah, feeling safe in this world. Absolutely. School violence. Socialization and internet security. Yes. Yes. Social media is something most of us really didn't have when we were young. Bullying has been around a very long time, although it has evolved now and entered into those social media spaces. Absolutely. So I've asked this question to students as well. when I've done a version of this presentation with students, and they will say, these kinds of things too. Other things they'll say is just feeling stressed out, feeling stressed about school and academics and tests and doing well, balancing lots that they have going on in their life. And when we look at the statistics and the data, what we'll notice is that right now, nearly 1 out of every 3 adolescents will meet the criteria for an anxiety disorder. So that means that there's a lot of stress. Almost a third of all young people today are experiencing some version of anxiety. 46% of children in the US have experienced at least one adverse childhood experience. One experience in childhood that may have left them with a trauma that they carry and have to process. And that, of course, connects also to why they might be experiencing anxiety. Distraction, this is a big one. In our digital world today, US teens spend on average 9 hours a day on digital entertainment. That includes their phones and their iPads and their computers, not including schoolwork. 9 hours a day in the digital world. That's a lot of stimulation. And lastly, isolation. Nearly 40% of high school seniors will report that they have often feel lonely and left out. 40% of high schools, that's almost half of all high school seniors have reported a sense of feeling lonely. We have, Claudia also chimed in there on the chat. My big challenge is to get my daughter out of her room and have time with family. And the other concern is the addiction to the phone. Absolutely. And this is something even adults are experiencing, this addiction. We are all in this together right now. And there's a lot going on, and this stuff is hard. And so it's important for us to recognize all these challenges and to recognize how mindfulness actually helps with all of these things. So what can mindfulness do to help address? It's not going to be it's not a magic pill. It's not going to solve all our problems like that in an instant, but it can help. And there have been over 10,000 studies now, a lot of research, a lot of science that has shown that these practices really do work. And what have they been shown to do? They've shown that they can help students focus better. So it helps us focus our mind, especially when we're so addicted to the phones and to the technology, which scatters our mind and has us thinking about all these different things. Think of how fast you scroll through and you get this hit of entertainment, blah, 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 blah. Mindfulness quiets all that and helps the mind focus one thing at a time. So mindfulness can help students focus better in school and in life. It helps them release stress and anxiety. It helps them think clearly and make smarter choices. Mindfulness practices will actually help activate the prefrontal cortex, which is the part of our brain that's responsible for making smart choices and thinking more clearly. It helps us think more positive thoughts. We're actually gonna do a little practice together so you can get experience of how it does that. It helps us feel more peaceful. It helps us better understand and control our emotions as well as the emotions of others. So these are just a few of many benefits. There have also been lots of medical benefits in terms of mindfulness helping improve sleep, helping to lower blood pressure, helping to manage pain. But these are just some of the ways it can help students in school. And guess what? Adults can experience all of these benefits in their lives as well. So this is something we all can benefit. It's not just for our kids. We are all of us here as parents. I'm a parent too to 2 young kids, and I need these practices just as much as they do, if not maybe even more so. So this is for all of us. And so what is it? This is a question because there's a lot of different ways to define mindfulness, and sometimes there's some confusion about what it means. So what I'm sharing with you here is how we define it in MCPS. When we talk about mindfulness, what are we talking about? We're actually talking about a science. We root everything we do in research, in the studies that have shown us what practices work. And so it is a science of self-development and self-awareness. And it's cultivated through the alignment of body, breath, and mind. three key ways to practice mindfulness through the body, the breath, and the mind. It teaches us how to steady the mind and steady the emotions while awakening the intuitive and peaceful qualities of our heart. So how does it work? How does it do this? As we mentioned, it's three key areas of the work. What we do is we recognize that body, breath, and mind are all interconnected. So in a more traditional way of thinking about well-being, we've kind of had, things that were focused on the body, right? Exercising or, nutrition, just focused on the body, right? Things for the health of the body, or going to the doctor and they probe and they do tests and they look at your body. And so it's focused on that. And then there can be things for the mind, right? Like maybe, therapy practices where you talk therapy, or maybe or just practices for the mind where you want to do puzzles or anything that gets your mind thinking or creative. But what we have come to recognize through mindfulness is that all of these things are actually interconnected. We can't isolate them. They don't work by themselves. So if you think about stress, for example, which is what draws a lot of people to practice mindfulness, it's what drew me to practice mindfulness. When you think about the experience of stress, it affects all three of these areas. It affects our body, it affects our breathing, and it affects our mind. So it'll affect our body in different ways, depends on the person, and it depends on what they're feeling. But think of like an emotion, a stressful emotion, like anger, let's say anger. Your body is going to tense up. If you just think about, what does my body do when I get angry? Maybe your shoulders tighten up, or maybe your fists clench, or maybe your jaw clenches. Or think of another stressful emotion like fear or worry. What might happen? Maybe your eyebrows furrow, or maybe your face scrunches up, or maybe your stomach gets tight. Your body has a response to stress. It changes when you feel stressed. And you know what? Your breath changes too. When we're breathing, when we're feeling calm, our breath is slow and deep. If you imagine yourself just in your favorite place in the world on vacation, you're going to breathe slow and deep. But if you're feeling anxious or worried or scared, you're going to have short, shallow breath. It's a different way of breathing. Our breath changes. So our breath is impacted by stress. And lastly, our mind is impacted by stress because it will attach itself onto a stressful thought, onto a worried thought or an angry thought, and it will replay the thought over and over and over again in the mind. So if somebody said something that upset us, we're going to keep replaying that thing over and over again, come back to it. Even if we try to get our mind off of it, it's going to come back to it later. The mind gets affected by stress. And so it's important that we recognize that every single part of ourselves is affected. And so in order to practice mindfulness and in order to process and release that stress, that harmful emotion, or the harmful thoughts, we have to practice in all of these areas. So we move our body. We move our body in very intentional ways. We stretch it, we let go of tension, we keep our joints moving. We can move in ways that increase our energy, improve our flexibility, strengthen our core muscles. We practice through our breathing. We use purposeful breathing techniques to create effects like calming the mind and increasing the focus and raising the energy level. And then we practice meditation practices with the mind that will help the mind focus on one particular on this particular moment. So it might focus on the breath, it might focus on a positive thought, it might focus on your senses, the things you're hearing right now or the things you're feeling. So anything that's going to help the mind focus and come here. Because when you think about it, so much of our day, we are divided. Our body is here, but our mind is elsewhere. If you think about yourself brushing your teeth in the morning, is your mind there paying attention to the toothbrush brushing your teeth? Or when you're taking a shower, is your mind there feeling all of the water on your hair, on your scalp? Or is your mind thinking about other things? Is it thinking about the to-do list? Is it thinking about what it has to do later today? or what's coming up at work tomorrow. Sometimes we can drive ourselves somewhere and we don't even know how we got there because we were thinking about something else the whole time. So our body can be here in one place and our mind can be elsewhere. We could be talking to somebody and we have missed everything they said because the mind went somewhere else. The body stayed there the whole time. The face was watching and looking, but the mind went somewhere else. So mindfulness says, bring all of these parts of ourselves together. Bring them here together, the body and the mind and the breath working as one unit for our well-being. So that's essentially what we're trying to do. We're trying to take all these pieces of ourselves, we're trying to align them. And through that alignment, we are letting go of all of the things that has us scattered. We have to stop scattering our energy and sending it out in 1,000 different directions. We cannot function well like that. And actually studies have shown multitasking doesn't work. It's actually not good for us. So mindfulness is the opposite, right? It helps us focus one task at a time, one thing at a time. If I'm driving right now, let me be driving. I'm not going to worry about my to-do list. Just let me be here driving. And like that, whatever it is you're doing, if you're having a conversation, you can practice mindfulness anywhere you are by simply practicing coming into that moment and saying, you know what, I'm just going to be right here. If I'm listening, let me just be listening. Not practicing, you know, my next thing that I'm going to say in my head, just listening. So let's practice together now, actually. I'm going to do a few just simple practices with us for each of these areas to give you a little taste. There's so many different practices for mindfulness. So don't think that these are the ones. These are just examples of ones. So we're going to do some spinal stretches to move our body. So we're going to learn some simple ways we can stretch and move to strengthen, to keep our spine flexible as we age, and so that we can strengthen our core muscles and improve the flow of energy in our body. We're going to practice box breathing, which will help us to slow down the breath and create a little bit of space between the inhale and the exhale. And then we'll practice a little visualization where we focus our mind on a visual, an image that's going to cultivate positive feelings and emotions for us. And yes, I did see the question in the chat, and yes, I can absolutely share this presentation at the end of our time. So for now, though, I'm going to stop sharing my screen because for the movement practices, I want you to be able to see me better. So I'm going to pin myself here so that you can see. And you can, what's beautiful about these practices, I'm scooting back a little bit so that you can see the movements a little bit more easily. And I'm actually going to just stay in my chair because the thing is, you don't have to, and if you notice, I'm still in my work clothes. You don't have to put on yoga attire and lay out a yoga mat. I mean, that's beautiful. If you can do that, but you don't have to. I a lot of times don't have time for that. So here I am just in my chair, and you can do this from a chair as well. This is accessible for anybody. And what you'll notice is when I sit in my chair to practice these movements, I move forward a little bit. I'm not leaning back in my chair because two reasons. One, I like to have a long, kind of tall spine and just be a little bit aware of how I'm sitting. You'll notice that throughout our day, you can bring mindfulness just to how you're sitting. So much of the day we spend kind of like this, or we're doing kind of things to our spine that actually impact how well we can breathe. This is the pathway of our breath in and out of our body. If we're kind of hunched over or anything like this, we're actually impeding, we're stopping the breath from being able to flow as freely as if we were kind of in one nice long line and letting it move. So the way we sit is important. And I want you to just imagine that the crown of your head is reaching a little higher toward the ceiling and your neck and shoulders relax. And you could just let your hands kind of rest in your lap here. And we're just going to start with some circles. We're going to start just opening up here. We're working along the spine. We're going to start at the base in our lumbar spine and in the hip region here. And we're just going to make some circles like this in our seat. Okay, so if you notice, I'm keeping a nice, long, tall spine. I'm not curving or anything when I'm doing it. I'm just staying nice and straight and making some big circles. And you can do this as fast or as slow as you want. But what we're starting to do is we're starting to um, energize the lowest part of our spine and around our hips. Our joints are incredibly important. And so we want to keep blood flow and circulation moving through our joints freely. Next time you come around through the center, pause and go the other way. And start to connect your breath to the movement so that as you round forward, you take a breath in. As you round back, you breathe out. One more round, and then you're going to bring yourself back to center. Take an inhale in and exhale out. Take a moment to notice how you feel from just that simple movement. And now we're going to continue to work the spine. We're going to flex and extend the spine. So this is going to help us, again, with spinal mobility and also strengthening the core muscles that protect our spine. So we're going to do that by keeping our hands, our palms face down, just on the tops of our knees. And then we're going to flex our spine forward, kind of opening the heart. As you inhale in, you might lift your chin a little bit. And then as you exhale back, you're going to round back and bring your chin towards your chest. So inhale, flex the spine forward, and exhale, round back. And just do a few of these, moving with your breath. One more inhale in, and an exhale out, and return to center. Breathe in and release. Again, take a moment to notice how that movement felt for you. We're going to continue to move our spine in all different directions. So now we're going to do some easy twists. This is another way of moving the spine. The reason the spine is so important is because it is from the base of the brain, it connects us to the brain to all the rest of the body. So actually, you can actually put your hands on your shoulders. That might be an easier way to practice. You could put your forefingers in front, your thumbs in the back, and keep your arms parallel to the ground. And then we're just going to simply turn from side to side. And as you do that, keep your head and neck in line with your chest, and you're just moving from one side to the other. If we ever do anything that feels uncomfortable, just back out of the pose. These are generally pretty gentle and accessible to everyone, but sometimes if you've had a concern in your spine, like a herniated disc, if there's anything that becomes painful, just take a break. The other nice thing about twisting like this is it actually helps stimulate our digestive system. And so, because this is where all of our intestines are, all the small and large intestines. And so if food gets stuck along the way on its path, this twisting motion actually helps stimulate it. One more on each side, then come to center, relax your hands, inhale in, and exhale out. Again, take a moment to notice if there's anything that changes for you with these movements. Do you notice your energy level changing or your blood flow? Can you feel any shifts? I'm just going to do a couple more here. So we're going to bring our hands back to our Shoulders just as we were, but the other, now we're going to take lateral extensions of the spine, side stretching. And so we're just going to inhale in. And as we exhale out, side stretch to one side. And then inhale through center. And exhale out the other way. Just do a couple more on each side. Move with your breath. One more each side. The next time you come through center, we'll pause here and just roll the shoulders a little bit. We're just going to draw some nice big circles with our elbows, like our elbows are drawing circles around our shoulders in one direction. We're going to start just in one direction here. If you're rolling the shoulders back, this particular movement is so important to counteract the effects of our daily life. And then go the other way. So much of our daily life is actually spent with our shoulders hunching forward over our phones and over our computers, over our steering wheels. All right, relax the arms down. Take a moment to take a nice big deep inhale in and then exhale out. Now we're going to begin to settle the body. We've done some nice, beautiful movements to keep the body flexible, to stimulate blood flow and circulation. And now we're going to settle. And we're going to settle our eyes. So you might find a soft place for your eyes to gaze, because now you don't need to see me anymore. You don't need to see the screen. You just need to hear, just listen. So you can look down or just relax, soften your gaze. Or you can close the eyes completely if you'd like. I'm going to bring attention to our breath. And just notice what it's like to inhale and exhale. I'm going to start to practice something called box breathing. With this particular breathing, we're going to inhale for 4 counts, hold the breath for 4 counts, exhale for 4 counts, and hold the breath out for 4 counts. What this practice does is it creates a little bit of space between the inhale and the exhale, between the exhale and the inhale. It creates space between action and reaction. And this helps us find a little bit more silence, a little bit more quiet, and helps teach us to pause before we react to something. So with your eyes soft or your eyes closed, let's all inhale in, 2, 3, 4. Now hold it. 2, 3, 4. Exhale. 2, 3, 4. Hold out. 2, 3, 4. Continue. In. 2, 3, 4. Hold. 2, 3, 4. Exhale. 2, 3, 4. Hold it out. 2, 3, 4. Breathe in. 2, 4. Hold. 4. Breathe out. 4. Hold it out. 4. In. Last one together. Hold it. Breathe out. Hold it out. Take about 2 or 3 more on your own. Count at your own pace. Same idea though, count in, hold for the same number of counts, breathe out, and then hold it out, all for the same number of counts. So a couple more at your own pace. At the end of your next exhale, let your breath be natural and easy. Return to a natural breathing pace. Take a moment to notice how you're feeling. And from this space, bring to mind a word or phrase that captures for you a feeling that you want to have more of in your life every day. So maybe you want to feel more calm in your life every day, or maybe you want to feel more joy in your life, or more gratitude, or more love, or peace, or patience. It doesn't matter what the word is. Let a word come to mind that's true for you. What do you want to feel more of every day? And start to bring to mind an image of yourself and what you would look like if you were experiencing this feeling right now. So if you chose the feeling of peace, and just bring an image to mind for yourself of what you would look like feeling totally peaceful. See that image of yourself and look at the expression on your face. Imagine what your face looks like if you had this feeling completely taking over you right now. And imagine what your kind of body looks like if you're sitting or if you're standing, what it looks like to be in that space with that feeling. And as you hold that image in your mind for the next few breaths, every time you breathe out, just silently say to yourself, I am, and then you fill in the sentence with whatever word you chose. I am peaceful, or I am patient, or I am loved. Whatever you've chosen, every exhale out, repeat that phrase for the next few breaths. Now we're going to bring our attention back to our breathing. We're going to take one big, deep, long inhale in through the nose, your biggest inhale yet. And then part your lips and sigh it out through the mouth. Start to wiggle your fingers and toes. Maybe take a little stretch to start to move the body and wake it back up. Let your eyes open halfway. Take another breath here. And then you can open your eyes completely and bring your attention back to our shared Zoom space together. Take a moment to just reflect for yourself on how the practices worked for you. If you noticed any particular effects or changes, did some practices work better for you than others? For each one of us, these practices they work differently for each one of us. Some of us like a little bit more of the kind of quieter, more reflective ones. For others, we're a little bit more restless. We like to move more. So just notice what's true for you. And as I mentioned, there's lots more types of practices than just these. We're going to have time now for questions, but I want to make sure I am going to drop this presentation in the chat. And I want to make sure I point out for you the resources that are all linked in here, because there's lots of ways for you to continue if this is something of interest to you and you want to learn more. Right here at the top, we have a mindful moment video series that's been created by MCPS educators. There's tons of them here. And if you click on any one, you'll learn more about different mindfulness practices. And they're usually somewhere between 10 and 20 minutes long each. And they're practices for anyone, for adults, for kids. You can do them together with your children. And then the rest of these here, there are there's different articles and different videos. Some of the research, if you really want to learn more about the research, there's tons out there. There's links here for all of it. So I'm going to drop the link to this presentation in the chat. Thank you. And then we can take some questions. And I think a couple already came in, at least one came in already in the chat. So let me scroll up to that so I make sure we don't miss it. All right, so a question has come in. How can I or we help how can we help other parents and grandparents, aunts, uncles, and older cousins, Montgomery County, Maryland, children, teens, and tweens get involved or participate in the parent workshops? How can MCPS help me accomplish this goal? Okay, so this would be a question I think more for probably, it sounds like you want to have more people involved in the Parent Academy workshops. So maybe that's something for Abebe or Giovanna to make note of and bring back to their team. And I think Giovanna has also shared in the chat the link to the Parent Academy with the schedule for future workshops that you can share with your communities and with your family and friends. Are there any other questions specifically about mindfulness, about any of the practices we did, or any of the information we shared? You're welcome to either drop a question in the chat, or if you prefer to unmute and ask, that would be fine as well. Well, I did want to just mention real quick a little bit about the practices that we did. And if questions do come in, of course, I can stop and take them. But since I don't see any questions right now, I just wanted to just explain a little bit, a couple of the things here. I talked a lot while we were doing the spinal stretches about the benefits of increasing the blood circulation and strengthening the core muscles, keeping our joints flexible and moving, especially as we get older, and especially as we pay attention. We talked about, the effects that uh, lots heavy technology use and cell phone use can have for students. Well, one of the effects it has on all of us is it kind of keeps us locked in certain positions for extended periods of time. If you think of kind of what our body does when it's hunched over a little phone, what it does to like our fingers and our wrists and our shoulders and our neck. And so, anytime we bring awareness and attention to it, we can, kind of do a little self check and just roll the shoulders back, relax the hands. We can do little stretches. When the coronavirus first hit and we were on our computers all day, I started to feel it in my wrists and in my hands. And so mindfulness makes us aware of these things and says, oh, something's going on here that's not quite right. This isn't really good for me. So I started naturally kind of doing some wrist rolls, and all of that pain went away. So it's about bringing attention and awareness to what's going on in our body and what's going on in our experience, and then making whatever moves or adjustments we need to make so that we can feel better and feel healthier. The box breathing, as I mentioned, that particular practice, it has us pausing between the inhale and the exhale, and between the exhale and the inhale. And that can be uncomfortable at first when you first practice that, because we're not used to that. But as I mentioned, what it does is it helps us slow down a little bit with the breath. If we can slow it down and drop into that very brief silent space between the inhale and the exhale, we can start to get more comfortable in the space between an action and a reaction. Because so many problems that we have in our life happen because somebody upsets us or something stresses us out, and then we get we get very emotional, and then we immediately react back and we send the emotion back out on the person that gave it to us. And then what happens is we're all sending that emotion out around the world, right? Somebody upsets us, somebody angers us, and then we either send it right back to them, or we hold on to it and then we bring it home and send it out to somebody at home, or we get in the car and we send it out to somebody driving too slow in front of us, honking our horn. So we send, we get very reactive when we're moving too fast. And when we're not bringing mindfulness and awareness, our emotions get the best of us and we end up in a state of reactivity. And so what the practice is to pause, just to pause, to take in what we experienced for a moment, to let it process, let it settle, breathe, and then determine how to respond. And almost always, if you take that brief pause with just a couple of breaths, you will respond differently than if you did not take the pause at all. So I see a question has come in. What is the most effective strategy for stress? Oh, great question. Yes. I would say it really depends from person to person, but I think the most powerful thing we can do to combat stress is breathing. Because breathing is easy, and we always have it available to us, and we can do it anytime, anywhere. So slow down the breath and breathe more deeply. Very easy. Those two things, you can do it anywhere. If you're sitting in the middle of a meeting stressed out, if you're sitting in traffic stressed out, if your kids are screaming at home and you're stressed out, slow, deep breaths. That's it. Slow, deep breaths. It will, the more you practice that, it makes a difference. The other thing here, the visualization and the affirmation, where we focused our attention on a positive word and thought, I wanted to mention about that too. We want to bring attention to what we input into our minds all day long. This is very important. Because actually, when we start to pay attention, we'll notice a lot of the things that we are consuming, a lot of the information we consume, either through the media, through social media, or whatever it might be, a lot of it can actually be quite aggravating to our nervous system. A lot of the news, I had to go on a news diet when I first started practicing mindfulness. I was like, I can't, because when I started paying attention, I realized it was affecting me. It was affecting my emotions, my nervous system. It was affecting my well-being. So we start noticing how the things we're like letting in to our mental state, how they're affecting us. And then we can make, once we start noticing that, we can make smarter choices and say, do I want to give my time to this right now? Do I really want to spend my time, you know, doing this particular thing if it's making me feel this way? So notice, anything that's aggravating our mind or making us think worried thoughts or making us think fearful thoughts or making us think angry thoughts. They may not, those things, you may need to take some breaks from those things. We're not saying that those things are necessarily bad, but you might need to take breaks, especially if they're kind of consuming you. So bring attention to the things we feed our mind. That's also a powerful way to practice mindfulness. All right. Well, I'll stick around in case there are any other questions, but I just want to thank you all so much for joining us and for practicing mindfulness with me this evening. And I hope the presentation was helpful. We have the link in the chat if you want to reference it. And I have my email address here. I do work in the Restorative Justice Unit in MCPS, and I'm always delighted for opportunities to share mindfulness with others. So thank you all so much, and I wish you a wonderful evening.